Welcome back to the fourth and final episode of our four-part video series, Admission Essentials by Sesameed Education. In this episode, we'll be covering what makes a good interview. I'm your host, Daniel Cito. I'm an education consultant, founder and head of Sesameed Education. For those of you who are new here, Mr. Leo Marshall is our special guest for this series. Leo has served in the independent school world for 40 years, be it at day schools or boarding schools. As a teacher, as an athletic coach, director of college guidance, director of admissions, director of advancement, deputy headmaster, all the way to president and CEO. Now retired, Leo last held the position of director of admissions and financial aid at the Webb Schools in the United States. Welcome back, Leo.
Hi, Daniel. Nice to see you again.
So good to have you here with us. This is the final episode, and today we're going to be spending all our time into deep diving into the role of interview in the boarding school admission application assessment process. Leo, can you share with us what is the purpose of the interview anyway? I mean, why do boarding schools in their application process include a component called the interview? What is so special about it? What role does it play? Can you share with our viewers?
Well, the interviews are very important because the application is just a name on a piece of paper. The standard scores are just numbers. We want to know the personality. It's not any different than a company going to hire a new employee. I don't know many companies that hire a new employee just by looking at the application. They have to meet the person. You want to get to learn about the personality. You want to learn what they know. You want to learn, on the case of the student, what they know about the school. So the application, standardized test scores, personal statement, those are wonderful and those are important. But the interview, you have to interview at a school if you want to be successful.
I would like to tap on your experience working at boarding schools as well as day schools. Do you find if there's any difference in focus or emphasis in the role of interviews in the application process between day schools and boarding schools? Or are they fairly similar?
They're equally important. For the day school has to look for the same things. But remember, in a boarding school, the student's going to live there for at 24 hours a day. They're not going to be able to go home at 3 o'clock, as I've said in a previous discussion. So we want to know, can we live this student? Can this student live with other students in a dormitory, different cultures, different experiences? It's really critical. Boarding school students go to activities after school. They don't go back to their dorm room and sit around. Some schools have chapel programs that are important to be attended. Others have a wide range of activities that they want to engage the student in. So we're going to live with a student for 24 hours a day, and that's a real different proposition than applying to a day school when they're there they can just be there for the school day. Not saying that interviews aren't important to day schools, they're very important. But the one added thing we look for is, what kind of person is this? Can they live with others?
Leo, I would like to use some of your terms that you had previously mentioned in our earlier episode. And there's boarding schools look for interesting students or students that are interesting. Can you share a little bit more about this whole idea of American boarding schools looking for students that are interesting? Can you share a little bit about this concept?
Well, I can't speak for other countries, but America, we really do value the person. And we want to know who this person is. And an interesting student, how to define that depends on the person. We're not interested in a student who just wants to study all the time and doesn't want to do anything else. I think any parent can agree that's not a very interesting student. That's just a driven student who just wants good grades. And those are fine. But interesting students do things. They have a wonderful love of life, personality. They want to try things. They have a specific interest, a hobby that they're interested in that they really take to another level. I think everybody knows what an interesting person is when you meet one. You say, well, this person's really different. They're just not like anybody else. And no child is the same. But sometimes there's a sense that they're being a little bit programmed to only do this to get to this when other children are just allowed to be children. And when they're allowed to be children, allowed to be teenagers, their wonderful personalities blossom, and that's what makes them interesting. So every child is interesting, but sometimes it's hard to find out that because they may come into the interview thinking, I only can talk about this, I only want to do this, I don't want to make a mistake, when that doesn't work. The students that we admit often are students that we just loved in the interview. Obviously they were qualified academically, but we just thought they were just great fun. Sense of humor, ability to talk to an adult and to other students. I think we all know what an interesting person is when we meet one.
I would like to dwell on that concept a little bit further, if you don't mind. Because especially in Asia, I wouldn't generalize Asia because Asia has many different cultures, but there are certain aspects of Asian cultures that are more driven towards a particular outcome, right? So for some parents, being very driven to get good grades is not wrong. It's actually something to be aspired towards. So what is the merit behind this being an interesting person, being interesting? I mean, of course, there are long-term benefits in life of having a very interesting personality. But can you elaborate a little bit more from an educational angle, from a lifelong, long-term perspective, the benefits of being an interesting person?
See, it's so common for us to think about what an interesting person is. It's hard to think of not. But there are some cultures where they have these national examinations it's only the score. But we have to live with these students, and we want them to, and we have so many applications, we only have so many spaces. So we're not going to take a student that only wants to study all the time, because that's not the focus of our schools. Our schools are about educating the whole person, not just the intellectual. We're also here to educate the emotional side of them, their emotional intelligence. And by doing that, we want them engaged in things. We believe that by engaging in activities outside school, things that they love, engaging in wonderful dialogue in the classroom, being interested in learning, those are we really value. We don't really believe in rote test preparation programs where that's all you do. There are some Americans who get in these programs, but the test score doesn't tell us anything about the student, nor do the grades. They just tell us that they're academically ready. But that doesn't mean that they're a person who is used to working with students with the same intellectual level, that they're going to engage in a dialogue in the classroom about a subject matter and may disagree politely and want to listen to other opinions. So we look for students who can do that. And we have activities we require. So we have sports teams. We have to fill those sports teams. We have music programs, choral programs, art programs. We want students to participate in those programs. And so if the student says, all I want to do is study or prepare for a test, that's probably not a very interesting student. I understand the imperative of other cultures and the way they do their national examinations. I'm not commenting on that. I'm simply saying in the United States, this is what we value. And that's where the interview comes in. With the understanding, it's only 30, 40 minutes. We do the best we can to figure out who the student is.
In terms of advising parents to prepare their child for the interview process, what are some of the do's or don'ts in terms of in this particular aspect? I mean, what would be a counter example of someone who is interesting, which is, someone who is not very interesting? What would that be like in an interview? What type of behavior can you recall that would be something that belongs to a very interesting candidate?
So the student, first of all, the interviewer, the person who interviews, is really important too. They have to be trained. They have to like children. They have to like students. So, and we know that some of the students, they're only 13, 14 years old for the most part. They're going to come in nervous. Think about that. They're just in middle school doing an interview with an adult. So we have an obligation as schools to make them feel comfortable. And often we're very good at that. But if the student is only answering questions they think that we want to, and give us answers we think we want to hear, that typically doesn't work well. But I'm going to tell you that for the most part, we can get them to be very relaxed and become children. And from there, we're going to ask questions. If the student really can't answer questions, yes, no, we call monosyllabic answers, then we don't learn about the student. Every piece of the application, the test scores, the grades, the activities, everything comes together, and the successful applicant everything is revealing. Not one piece is missing. So if we don't learn much in the interview, that's one less thing we can use to make a selection. And most of the time, this is important, most of the time we don't have their test scores and grades, because remember, those typically don't come in until the time the application deadline comes, because obviously we want to wait for the end of their term before the grades come in. So we're often interviewing them in September and October. We have no idea anything else about this student, which is a good thing. We don't want the test scores and grades creating sort of a bias. A great student, we call it the halo effect. They have great grades, great test scores, and that tends to bias the interview. This is a wonderful student, as opposed to just meeting the student without any idea of anything else about them. So they have to remember that we don't know much about them. This is their opportunity to talk to us.
When they look for students, a lot of times beyond what they look for students that are interesting, they are also looking for the right fit. As many schools would say, they're looking for the right fit. And yet, schools are so individualized. So in a sense, every school has their own unique environment and a unique student culture, student body, and things, the way things are being done are just so unique, from school to school. How would a family, or how would a student, applicant himself or herself, be able to conduct research to learn more about the school in order to help him or her to learn more about what exactly is the right fit with that particular school?
Well, there's no exact right fit, but we will know if a student interviews with us that they don't know our school. I mean, that's one thing, because remember, these families sometimes have 5 or 6 or more applications, schools they're looking at, and they may have a preferred school. So they may come to your interview where they know everything about the school, and that's why they're there. And that is a big point for us. Or we can sort of discern they don't know a lot about the school, and we're just an extra school they're applying to, but we're not their preferred school. So what a right fit is kind of is a bit subjective. Okay, except to say, if we have a wide range of sports activities, we would like to know if the student's going to participate in sports or not. That would be a right fit. Understanding that, let's say we're an all boys school, all girls school, would they be comfortable in just that environment? There's both very different dynamics in the classroom. All boys and all girls schools are absolutely wonderful places. So, but if it's the interviewer knows their school, they will get a sense of this student would be the right fit. But again, it's a little bit subjective. But the key is the student and family have to know the school. And if the family comes in and all they want to ask about is what is our college placement, that's not very interesting, because they can read that on the website. That's not what we're looking for. We can't guarantee they're going to get into whatever college they're thinking of. We can't guarantee that. We're going to tell them that. If that's all they want to know about us, that's all they think we're going to do, then it's not going to be the right fit. So that wouldn't be a right fit, because that's not the student we're looking for, because we will prepare the student for anything. Where they go to college will be based on their own performance and aspirations while they're in school. What is not a right fit is an immature child who gives a sense of immaturity, in the interview, and we can pick that out. Someone that is just not ready developmentally to go to a high school, meaning that they may have the intellectual, but they're just not emotionally ready for the kind of rigor we're going to have. And I think we all know a child is just not ready for that level of work, because boarding schools are different. It is a little more intense environment. because of you get up in the morning, you go to breakfast, you have your 2 or 3 classes, you go to lunch, you go 2 or 3 classes, you go to activities, you go back, you have some break time, you go to study, then after you go to dinner, and then you have study time, and then you have to be in bed at a certain time. You can't stay up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning playing computer games or studying. Then you're back at it the next day. And while it sounds, when I say rigor, the students, we admit, enjoy that. They can handle that kind of thing, but that they're immature, if they can't get up in the morning, they're not used to cleaning the room, they're not used to, managing themselves, that wouldn't work for us. And sometimes you can figure that out in an interview. So a parent approaching boarding schools need to understand that your child's going to be asked to be, and I've used this term before, more self-reliant, more self-responsibility. We're not parents who are going to tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. We're going to say, here are the expectations. Now you must take that and work with it. Long answer, but that's what we're looking for.
Gotcha. Now, boarding schools make themselves known through several different either channels or media. The most common one is the website. So they put forth information on the website for parents to read and to research upon. And many schools also would travel to the local cities annually. Schools would travel either one time or more than one time to visit different major cities. So that would be another occasion for parents in those cities to meet up with the boarding school officers. And then there's the grand slam, which is the campus visit, to visit the school right there on campus and tour around and to experience the vibe, the feel. How would you advise parents while doing this research? I guess the website is kind of relatively straightforward, in terms of what to do, what to research on the website. But when it gets to the more not so tangible parts, such as heading into a school reception, meeting a school officer at a school reception, listening to them present, or maybe going on to the campus tour or to visit the school on campus. How would you encourage the family how to make use of those opportunities to look for what they should learn about a school?
When I used to come over to all the countries, like many mission officers, this is pre-COVID when more were coming over, we as mission officers have to be expected of the families to distinguish our schools. So the work really has to be done first by the mission officer. We have to distinguish our schools. And families going to those sessions to listen should expect that, because they should be in a position of thinking, what if my child gets in? What will be the right place? They shouldn't approach that as, I hope my child gets in and then I'll figure it out. So if I was a parent, I'd go to those sessions saying, I want to know what's different about your school. What makes you unique? Some schools do it better than others. I've heard many presentations. And so the mission officers should be coming there with the understanding of what is unique to their school, and then why those families may find a good home at their school. So that's what they should expect from the reception. If they're going to be interviewed over there, again, they need to be ready to ask questions about the school and what makes it different, and know the school. Because the interviewer, again, even if they interview in the United States, but overseas, is going to want to know, how much does the student know about my school? Or are we're just one of 10, 15 schools we're looking at, and it doesn't matter. And then afterwards, if there's a table to go to, ask specific questions. Please don't ask, what colleges do you send students to? How many students get into this college? What are your top test scores? All of that is on the website. That's not interesting, okay? You could get the attention of the person behind that table by asking different questions. If you say, my son is interested in playing basketball, can you tell me more about your basketball program? Okay. My son is interested in calligraphy, and which most schools don't have, but wants to expand his art experience. What can you tell me? That catches someone's attention. So fairs aren't the place where you're going to get selected. But you could at least get some attention by asking the right questions if you have time. But you have to go to the campus. I know it may be difficult for international families, but you have to go to the campus if you want to. First of all, if you want to know about the school. And since I retired, I probably visited 100 boarding schools, and I haven't been to one that I wasn't so impressed with. They're all wonderful. They're beautiful places. The faculty are attentive and dedicated. The admissions staff loves their school. Sometimes you'll meet the head of school and get a chance to talk about it. There isn't a place I've been to that isn't wonderful. But by going to the school, you also can see what's different, how the dorms are managed, what the facilities are like. If I'm involved in soccer, where are the soccer fields and who do they play? But once you get on a campus, they're amazing places. They're just amazing places. And you can, a family will internally know what they're looking for without being able to express it. They'll get there and go, oh, this is for me. When I was a college counselor, it wasn't too different. I would say to students, you will know when you get to that college campus if this is right for you. You'll know it. You'll feel it. If they go to the college campus and the tour guides aren't very good, they're not paying attention, if the interviewer is distracted, that's not the school for you. If they're not paying attention to, it's not the school for you, because that will go translate into the regular school life of the school. That doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. But you have to see the campus. You have to go, because some people have this unrealistic image of what the school is, and then you get there and go, I didn't know that. And so you have to visit. Every family, and some schools require visits, and some don't. Some say you can interview by Zoom or interview with us overseas. If you can't make it to the campus, that's fine. Not saying you won't get admitted, but you visit a campus, you have another chance to shine by being there.
And I would have a rider on that by saying, seeing is believing. That's first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And also second, when I counsel parents, I ask them, right, when you're going to buy an apartment, or maybe not just even buy, you just rent an apartment for the next 4 years. You don't just rent it on paper, right? Oh, that's a good neighborhood. Oh, so I just go rent it or go buy that property. No, you actually go to do like what we call apartment shopping, right? I mean, you shop, go to different apartments to take a look, breathe the air, open the window, look around before you say, oh yeah, I want to live here for the next, 4 years or 2 years. I mean, if you would do that for yourself, for your own residential place, why wouldn't you do that for your child, your beloved child, for the next 4 years?
Exactly. Yeah. You don't go and find a magazine, a real estate journal, and says, here are the top apartment buildings ranked in our city, and I'm going to go to number one. And the same thing with our schools is they go to these rankings, which are meaningless. And I know, these ranking organizations will disagree. They're completely meaningless. None of those ranking organizations have visited our campus, not as far as I can tell. And I've asked them that when I met some. They haven't visited our campus. They haven't asked us, for hard information about our schools. Some just go to our website and say, this is number one, number two. And families believe that, but that's not the way you pick a school. You have to visit it. When I was applying 57 years ago to colleges, there was one college I really loved on paper. And I went to both campuses, and the second choice campus was the one I fell in love with. I just fell in love with the place. The people were amazing, and they were interested to me and interesting to me. They knew their school. The other one was great, but the second one just blew me away. And that's where I went to college. I was early admission to that school. And I think I was early admission besides grades, because I think they sensed I knew their school. They sensed that I really fell in love with the school, which I did. And it was, I had 2 degrees from that school. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. And that, we understand that as boarding schools and day schools, that there are reputations. Well, we've heard about this, we've heard about that. Okay. But you got to see it for yourself. But I often have had, why are you looking at my school, my former school? Why are you looking at the Webb Schools? I heard it's a good school. Okay. Now what? What did you know? Well, I didn't know. That's why I'm here. Okay. Because someone told me to be here, as opposed to, oh, so then you researched us and you found out about our famous paleontology program, the only program of its kind in the country. in the world, actually. Yeah, and I would really like to participate in that. I'd love to learn about what's called peccary trips. They're about peccary being a fossil pig, was the first fossil they found 80 some years ago. I heard about that, and I would love to learn more about your museum. Wow, there's interesting because they learned about us. Not that, well, I heard you're a good school. We get that a lot, by the way.
Got it. And I would like to write a little bit on our discussion on campus tour. This topic would probably warrant a totally different episode altogether on this subject matter, but maybe we can just skim through some of these highlights. Sometimes I feel that when I take parents or families onto the campus, they get like really blown away by the majesty of all these great grand buildings, chandeliers, thick carpet, all that really state-of-the-art lab or these fancy different, lecture halls and whatnot. I feel that actually takes the attention away from the more important things. And boarding schools is about people, right? So it's about the culture, it's about the atmosphere. And I would just like to learn more from Leo. I would like to learn more from you in terms of, in your opinion, what should really parents be looking at when they walk on the campus, other than these fancy buildings and structures?
Well, I think parents should not go there with stars in their eyes saying, I'm so happy they allowed me to visit their school. It should be, this is my child's most formidable years. 4 years of high school are the most formidable, not college. College is a professional preparation, and primary school is developmental, right? The formative years, the high school years, these are 4 years. This school is going to be educating my child for 4 years. They should be asking harder questions than where they go to college, which is, obviously it's important, but our kids are all going to colleges. So safety, how safe will my child be on this campus? Tell me about the dining opportunities. My child may be a vegetarian. Will they be taken care of? So they may have unique interests for their children. My child is very interested in theater. Can you show me your theater? What happens in the theater? Things like that. Often, the sad thing is most parents don't know what to ask, which means they're not researching the school. And the students are so nervous, sometimes they don't ask questions. And that's where the tour guides come in, or the mission officers have to know that they have to help fill in the blanks for these families and get them to ask questions. Most families, sadly, and I get it, are nervous and don't know what to ask. They just kind of look around. But if they're doing a tour of 5 or 6 schools, if they don't ask questions, they just walk around, they're just going to see what the school wants them to see. Here's the dorms, here's the students, here's the dining hall. And, there's a program tour most of the time. But when I would go to these schools, as when I retired and visited as a professional, and I would get on tours, I would ask a lot of questions. Like I would say to students, why did you pick this school? And I remember one student that was admitted to all 5 of the top schools in the country. I said, why did you, while he's showing us, and of course I was so impressed how articulate he was, I said, why did you pick this school? And that was so interesting. By the way, why he could pick that school? The school communicated with him in a special way right after he was admitted. They called him up and said, congratulations, I interviewed you. Anyway, that's a personable school. He turned down all the other great schools for that. You learn a lot from talking to the tour guides. Tell me a little bit about what's like for you to live in a dormitory away from your family for 3 months. And the tour guides like that. They want to know that. And by the way, there are some schools that after the tour is finished, we have a survey for the tour guides to fill out about their experience with the families. And, it'll say, well, mom and dad did all the talking. We never get a chance to talk to the child, or the child seemed disinterested. They do that. There's some schools that do that, and you need to know that. And, or the family was really engaged. They loved what they saw. So we're actually paying attention to the families too. But more important is, what specifically do families need to know about our schools? The big one nowadays is safety. How safe is the school? What's this community like? What happens on weekends? Do they have real activities, or are they just allowed to go to the mall and that's all that they do? What about the health center? My child is sick. I'm in Singapore, and my child is over in Massachusetts. What will happen if they become sick? And we have answers for all those questions. That is important. Those are the important things parents should be asking, not about which college are they getting into. Just go to the website. There's the list. You'll see.
Got it. My question now would be, because we took a slight detour, over the course of this conversation, talk a little bit about the campus tour, what to look for in a school. I would like to wrap that up back to our topic of this episode, which is about interview, right? So how would the child be able to demonstrate his or her knowledge of that school, and more important, his or her genuine interest in that particular school in that 30-40 minute window of interview with the admission officer after he has done all this research?
I think it's just asking questions of what you're interested in. And sometimes they just want to talk about what they're excited by. But there's no specific thing we're looking for. But if a child says, I'm interested in your orchestra, I play violin, can you tell me more about that? That's great. We love that. If you get the interviewer off of the standard question, that's really good, because a lot of schools have standard questions that at the interview, the child is kind of nervous. They're basic things schools will ask. I was very different. I just wanted to talk to the child about whatever they want to talk about. But if a child starts going in a different direction, and a good admission officer should let them do that, have that conversation. I had one time a young woman from Shanghai. She came in with a book of a very famous American poet named Robert Frost. She says, I read this. Can you want to talk about it? Well, I love Robert Frost. So we talked about Robert Frost. The rest of the interview, that's all we talked about. That's all I cared about, because that was interesting. So there's no way they have to be careful not to program themselves. This is what they want. I better do it this way. Be yourself. That's the most important thing. Just be yourself. Be who you are. That's scary for a little 13, 14-year-old. And that's where our job as admission officers, the interviewer, is to get them more relaxed. Because we get it that they're nervous. We're not interviewing college kids. So I'm hoping schools are sensitive to that. And I think that all the schools I've met, and I know most of the admission officers, they understand that.
Thank you, Leo. As we kind of wrap up on this, fourth and final episode, which is about interviews, if you would say something, what one thing would you say to our viewers, what to take away from this episode about the interview?
Don't come in programmed. Ask questions that are important, things that are important to you, not things that you've read about on the website. You're wasting your time. Remember, we only have 30, 40 minutes max in these interviews. Don't ask questions that they've already could find on the website. If you have an opportunity to talk more about what's special about your child, and hopefully a admission officer will ask that, go ahead. By the way, and I want to emphasize, sometimes they're two-part interviews, where the child's first, then the parent comes in. And so parents need to be ready for different kinds of questions. We haven't mentioned that. It's not just the child. And we're also, how much do you know about our school? What's important to you? Why are you looking at our school? And those sometimes are some of my favorite conversations. We love the children, by the way, but some of my favorite conversations, because you can really spend time with a family saying, let's say they talk a lot about test scores in colleges. And I said, you're a president of a major corporation. Are you hiring people based on their test scores? No. Did it matter what college they went to? No. I said, but for you to make a company successful, what are you looking for? A person who's emotionally flexible, that is a hard worker, someone who is willing to take risks, intellectual risks, someone who wants to learn more. I said, that's what we do. That's what we do. And, the test scores will just happen. The college will just happen. But what we do is we educate your whole person. Okay. And that's where the admission officers have to do their job, to get parents off of what most parents think are important. Well, I better find out what college I go to. I'm not de-emphasizing the idea about going to college. I don't mean to say that at all. But they're going to get into a college. Just look at the lists. I don't know what college they're going to get into. And the college that they thought they're going to get into in 9th grade may be the different college they're going to go to in 12th grade. But so we do interview the parents, and they should ask questions. And then the child interview is a little bit different. You're talking to a teenager. So those are things I would want parents to understand. But by all means, get to the campuses. Get to the campuses. And they should have expectation. This is something I need to emphasize over and over again. They should have an expectation that the school gives them the information they're interested in. They should have an expectation that the school is communicating with them on a regular basis. They should have an expectation that the school treats them as if they're the only person applying to their school. So the onus is on the schools also. It's not just all about the parents. Vast majority of schools will be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leo. We can talk for hours more on these topics, but we have come to the end of our 4-part series, Admission Essentials. And so first and foremost, I would like to thank Leo so much for taking the time to chat with us about your insights and experiences from all these years on admissions. And I would imagine, like myself, many viewers out there would walk away with actually more questions than what we had while walking into these episodes. So if anyone out there has more questions, please feel free to send them all in. We have our email address, hello@sesameed.com. Many ways that you can reach out to us through WhatsApp messages, telephones, you name it. So feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to understand more about your thoughts and concerns about boarding education, and we'll be more than happy to help. Leo, we'll love to invite you back for some other talks on other admission and boarding education related topics.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you very much, and I wish your families well.
To all viewers out there, if you have enjoyed this 4-part Admission Essentials series, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to Sesameed Education. If you have any questions whatsoever about admissions and any other aspects of boarding education, please feel free to leave down your comments in the comment sections below. Please stay tuned for more contents to come, as we'll be bringing forth videos on more and more topics about boarding education, and we'll be bringing more and more speakers like Mr. Leo Marshall to our midst. Thank you all for watching, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers!